I'm going to talk about the role of design and how the best writers that I have encountered in working with so many organizations were very interested in the visuals. They knew that their story would be read by more if it was well presented, so they collaborated. And we're going to talk about WED and IWED. WED stands for Writing, Editing, and Design, and it is a concept that my colleague and accompanist, Roy Peter Clark, and I created at the Poynter Institute. These are the three basic takeaways. The key to anything you design is accommodating the story. I'm trained as a journalist. I began my career in Miami at the Afternoon Miami News as a reporter and enter into the world of design through the back door because I like design and that's what I have done. But everything I do is based on the story. How can we tell that story better? And so it's all about WED, writing, editing, and design, the marriage of words and visual images. And the good designer is a visual storyteller. Today, we have to write across what I call the media quintet. If you're working in a newsroom today, chances are you may be called upon to do 2 or 3 short takes of your story for the watch, for the phone, for mobile platforms. And then you have also print, you have a tablet, you have online. So it's 5 platforms. Heaven knows how many we will have in the future. So right now, this is basically what it looks like. People are going from one platform to the other at any given time of the day. I always tell my clients that you need to actually promote your product, whether it's at the airport, on a bus station, wherever. You have to promote everything, telling the public that you provide stories across 5 different platforms. And it's there when you want to consume it, how you want to consume it. And I also tell, I'm constantly visiting a newsroom. In fact, in about 3 hours, I will depart from here for Delhi, India, and work there all week with the business newspaper Mint. That in a newsroom today, to me, when people ask me, what is the biggest problem with the transition? The biggest problem is the notion of frequency. Many editors come to work every day planning tomorrow's newspaper. 6 a.m. in the morning, there will be a product delivered. But the public is not consuming the information that way. The notion of frequency changed. So all day long, you're throwing raw meat to the lions. They're hungry, and you're throwing raw meat at them. Whenever you get the story, you go with it. When I went to journalism school, we learned don't go with a story until you have all the facts. Now we tell them at Columbia and every place else, you go with what you have, knowing that you can actually, 10 seconds later, update the story. So the raw meat is what you really are consuming on mobile platforms. All day long, you're getting short takes of stories and so on. The cook's take is the lean back. We all crave that lean back moment. Oh, I just got on my watch a couple of summaries of stories, but I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to read that. And so there is no evidence whatsoever to support the fact that long narratives are not popular today. In fact, they are. And the long narrative today has the advance, the trailer. The mobile provides the trailer because I'm in the middle of a meeting, but I see in here a couple of lines about a story and say, I'm going to read that story. That's the trailer. You have actually seduced me with 2 statements to read your story. But this is what I call the journalism of interruptions and everywhereness. You have no idea where people are reading those 2 blurbs. They could be in the gym, they could be on the bus, the train. And so we have to learn to write short. You have to seduce with a trailer, with 2 items that will make me want to read the entire story, which is what we see there. And for writers here, the good news for you is that you are at the top of your game right now because the homepage is sort of gone. Very few people come to the homepage of a newspaper or a magazine anymore. But we come in, the point of entry is an article, your article. And so I have one of my clients in Norway. Aftenposten is the New York Times of Norway. And when the editor who had been there 25 years retired, they hired a man who had never worked in print before. I was watching carefully. Being an old man, I said, I wonder how this will go in the newsroom. So here's a man who's worked only with digital, 41 years old, and the first thing he asked me to do is to put print in its place. Not to kill print, but to make it more lean back, more relaxing. The power of paper, the power of disconnect. I'm not going to get an alert or get a message on Facebook when I'm reading my newspaper. And so He told me, we produce 1,000 front pages every day. Because if the home page was a point of entry, if the front page of a newspaper is how you come into the Tampa Bay Times or the New York Times, today we come in through an article. We are on Twitter and Facebook, and we read your article. And we click. And that is exactly what we do. We had a conference at Columbia a few months ago, and Mr. Thompson of the New York Times was asked, what is the biggest challenge for the New York Times? And he said, getting someone to read a second article. Because you no longer have these home pages. And so what is happening is that we have worked so hard on the front door of your house. The architect worked at it, and so when you didn't pay 1 cent for the back door, everybody is coming into this back door, your article. For writers, this is a bonanza. You got the greatest opportunity ever to seduce with your article. And so that's why when we work with the McClatchy newspapers, this is a typical article page today. They were not like this before. We just did all of this work with the McClatchy newspapers, of which the Miami Herald is one of them. Notice that we have a headline, and you have 3 takeaways of the story, aimed at, written usually 90% of the time by the reporters. For here and for mobile, that's your trailer of the story. Seduce me, flesh out your story, tell me what's going to happen. Then you have the story. But because this is the front page now, I'm using this to tell you 4 more stories you may like. Something related to this, Amazon. If you like this book, you're going to like that one and that one and that one. Okay, so this is replacing. But this is an article. They came here because of your piece, because of what you wrote. So this is a great opportunity. This you don't read much about. But this is really one of the main themes happening in newspaper today for advertisers, which is another topic for another day. It's incredible. But at the foundation of all of this is writing, editing, and design. You are seducing with the words, you're seducing with how you plan that story, but also the guiding principle is that writing, editing, and design have to come together. And very quickly, in 2 minutes, I have to tell you how this came about. Roy Peter Clark and I were here in the 1980s seeing it's already been mentioned, the golden age of newspapers. Newspapers were doing well. They have plenty of pages. A food section might be 16 pages, and the entertainment section might be 12, 18. And so the emergence of design was happening. Color presses, there was color everywhere. And we began to see the abuses of that. So we would do this seminars, getting the word people, they were the sort of the ones on the left there with the gray suit, Perry Mason. And of course I would come in, and the graphics people were always Carmen Miranda, colorful. We were all playing in the sandbox. The writers were the serious people. We would get them together here and really make them face each other and talk to each other. And so we began to develop all this. Most recently, and this is a book I use in my class, Ellen Kissane has referred to the effects of narcissistic content. An editor who selects content because he or she likes it, whether the audience likes it or not. And I think we have narcissistic design. So there were pages like this, a full page with just an image of an avocado. Green is the new black. No text, no story, but the art director loved it. You had color, you had everything. So we would say, why don't you add a story about avocados in there? That would be so much better. Do you think the avocado page is gone? This is one of the winners in 2015 from the Society of News Design. So Roy, you and I need to do more web seminars. But the New York Times does it well. Just a little avocado, but the case for breakfast. There is substance in there. There is a story. They are doing it right. And I have 2 minutes. And of course, there was the most essential page of all of that era, the award-winning page from the Orange County Register. Eggs, beat them, whip them, but respect them in the morning. Nobody could write that headline today and come out alive. And then there were the designers in the newsroom. Oh, there was a designer who loved a certain font with the letter Q, would come to the writer and say, would you begin your story with a word that has the letter Q? You can imagine how that went in the newsroom. And suddenly, there would be a story that would begin, quit, said the boss. Today, it's I wet, and we really are beginning to see the same thing. Snowfall was a work of art in a multimedia story. But when it came out, the question was, was the video in this story about an avalanche superimposed in there just for special effects? Are we doing the avocado page in multimedia now? That is an interesting question. But this one won a Pulitzer, for The Guardian. It was about surveillance, spying on people. A Pulitzer Prize winner for The Guardian, beautifully done, because everything that was there counted for something. As a writer, as a designer, what you remember is that you have to assign a meaning to everything you have. If you don't, the reader does. And so we are now applying the principles of multimedia to all of these type of stories. The final assignment for my students at Columbia is a multimedia story. They're all writers, they're all journalists. And we're bringing that digital mentality to print. This is all from the New York Times, very quickly. They recently have done this story digitally. Donald Trump's Twitter insults, the complete list. How was that story covered in print? Not with a lead, not with a narrative, beautifully done. They actually would go in there and mention a name, Jeb Bush. Oh, this is what he said about him. And so it was easy to read. You don't do every story this way. But what is about what is the best way to tell the story. And so this was the right way for that writer to tell the story. Not in a narrative, not in the traditional lead, and so on, but differently. And so there you go, you see? Jeb Bush, a total embarrassment to both himself and his family. Easy to read, it was fun, it was a different way of telling that story. For the Super Bowl, they did something very different as well. And of course, now they have virtual reality. So you're going to start telling stories. And there's a lot of writing in virtual reality. When you're seeing all of this, there is a narrative. There is a story to go with it. Finally, this is what my students have done as of last week, the midterm project. These are all journalists at the Columbia University Graduate School. Their assignment was create a new product, mobile new product, for a legacy house, like the New York Times or the Guardian. And so this one was 5W, a news app for teenagers coming from Snapchat. Great idea. And this is how they would tell the story. When it happened, what happened, the 5Ws, using the old 5W concept for teenagers in reading the news of the day. Another one, Spectrum, an emphasis on diversity in the news. And finally, Streamline, the hottest stories of the day, just push play, all video. Finally, good storytelling happens when the writing, editing, and design come together. Avoid the excesses of narcissistic design, strive for functionalism, and ask the question, what is the best way to tell the story? Thank you very much. Whew, that was hard.